Thank you. Are there any other additions? Great. Well, I think we've got a plan for that. So next up, we have Ernie, our Vice President, Ernie Cooper, is going to give a little bit of background on the expansion. Ernie's been a board member for a year, and then before that, from 2017 to 2020, was on the board and a treasurer for most of that, right? Yep. So here's Ernie.
Can I just use your mic? Since this one's already on, they told me I have to hold a mic. As an introduction to the important information that will follow, I'd like tonight to tell you a story about an organization I think we all love, in which, despite name changes over the years, will always be known in this community as simply the Co-op. The story begins about 50 years ago with a group of friends who wanted to obtain good, healthy, and even organic foods that they were unable to find at the local A&P supermarket. After a few years as a buying club that pooled their orders to natural food vendors, they found there was enough interest among their growing group to support opening an actual store. Focusing their interest on good food and community rather than profit, they incorporated the new organization as a cooperative and opened for business on a storefront on Main Street in Belfast. The co-op grew steadily over the next decade and a half, and the storefront they had moved to when they outgrew the first one was itself being outgrown. An opportunity arose when the A&P vacated its store on Center Street, and after much discussion, debate, and review, the co-op decided to purchase the building in 1993. Of course, the expense was far more than any cash the co-op had on hand at the time. Most of the funds for the purchase and renovation would need to be borrowed from a bank, of course, but also substantially from loans, small and large, from individual co-op owners. The co-op community came together and raised the funds, and the purchase was made. It was a risk, of course, but the owners felt that the investment in the future was worth the risk. In fact, the investment in the larger space turned out to be a good decision that provided room for the co-op to grow well into the 21st century, and every owner who lent money for the purchase was later repaid in full with interest. Now here we are almost exactly 30 years later. The co-op has again grown substantially, not only in sales and membership, but also in friendships and community. Unfortunately, the building has not grown and is showing the wear of its 60 years of existence. As it did 30 years ago, the co-op community has spent much time considering the best approach to housing for the co-op in the coming decades, recognizing that doing nothing would be the worst of all possible choices. In consistent consultation with co-op owners, the co-op board and management looked at many alternatives over the past several years, including building a new store, either in the current location or outside of the downtown, buying a building vacated by another business, adding a second floor onto the current building, and more. All of these options proved either much too expensive or unsatisfactory, or both. So that brings our story to the current moment. After many meetings and discussions with co-op owners, grocery and building experts, co-op staff, and the community, we present tonight what we feel to be the best plan for the future: to renovate, expand, and update our current store. Like the co-op of 30 years ago, we will have to look to a combination of bank loans and loans from co-op members to be able to afford undertaking the project. We've asked you to gather together with us tonight to listen as we present information and talk with you about the project and funding plans and the future of the place we all know simply as the co-op.
Doug? Thank you. General Manager Doug Johnson.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I am Doug Johnson. I'm the general manager of the co-op. I've been the general manager since 2015. And thank you everybody for coming out tonight, and thank you to everybody who's attending via Zoom. We appreciate your commitment to the co-op, and thank you, Ernie, for that lovely story. All right, so I'm going to go through pretty quickly some of the things about our history, how we got to where we are with this project. So this picture is opening day of the Belfast A&P in 1963. You'll notice that that building looks really familiar, and it doesn't look like that much has actually changed since 1963. Oh, how did we get to here? So my story for how we got to the current place we are with the project starts in 2014. In 2014, the previous general management team, it was a 3-person team, they did our first ever market study to see what the possibilities were for us to expand in our community. Once we got the results of that market study back, we started doing member forums. So we were doing them quarterly. The first one was in May of 2016, talking about future development, talking about growth. What did people want out of their community? What did they want their co-op to be? Coming out of that member forum, we did a SWOT analysis with a group of owners, figuring out the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the co-op in the community. And then in October of 2016, we brought on board Bill Gessner, who, for those who aren't familiar, Bill Gessner was a founding member of just about every influential cooperative organization nationally. So anybody that we look to now for guidance, anybody that we look to now for help with governance, Bill was part of those, starting those organizations. And then later in his career, he built a career around getting co-ops started and getting co-ops expanded. So he's literally the person who wrote the book on co-op expansions. So we brought Bill up here in 2016 to work with myself and work with the board on expansion and what it would take to expand the co-op. Out of that meeting with Bill, we came up with 6 options for what we could do with the co-op. And these are the options. Right off the bat, you can probably tell that there's some that we took off the list quickly, but these were all the directions that we could go. After that, jump ahead a little bit to 2018. Once again, we took up expansion in earnest and started having regular forums with owners to talk about expansion. We had a shopper satisfaction survey in 2018 where there was questions about expansion and what people were looking for in the community. The overwhelming response from people in that survey was that they wanted us to stay in our downtown location. All right, so after those meetings and talking with owners and talking about sort of where we could go, we whittled it down to 3 options: renovate and expand the current store, build a new building in the current location, or relocate to another location. In August of 2018, we started working with our partners on this project. We started working with Woodhull, which at the time was called Caleb Johnson Studios, and Warren Construction. More member owner forums to talk about expansion, how to finance things, how to channel growth. At that point, the board was able to whittle it down to 2 options: renovate and expand the current store, or build a new building in the current location. In early 2019, in January of 2019, Bill Gessner passed away. So we kind of hit the brakes on a lot of our expansion planning just because it was kind of hard to go back to it once Bill had passed away. But in December of 2019, we engaged the National Co-op Grocers team, their development team, with helping us with financial feasibility for the project. After doing some pretty extensive financial feasibility work, we came to the conclusion that there was one option, and that's to renovate and expand the current store. In July of 2020, the first architectural plans from Woodhull went before the board of directors. That's what you can see there on the right of the screen. That's fairly close to what we have come up with as a final plan. In February of 2021, a scaled down version of that plan went to the board. And in February of 2022, the business renovation plan for the project started going out to lenders, people that we would be looking to help us finance the project. In May of 2022, we launched the Your Future Co-op series. So this was a series of videos online and Q&A sessions where people could hear about where we were with the project and ask questions and have answers in real time. In July of 2022, the board formally approved the renovation project. And in August of 2022, our partners of Cooperative Fund Northeast, LEAF, and CEI approved the loan that we would need to finance the project. All right, so this is where we are. So what you're seeing on the screen now is a rendering of the store as it will be when it's complete. There's the blueprint, which you saw when you came in. The big takeaways from the project is that the cafe seating area that we took away when the pandemic hit and we used it for our curbside program, the cafe is coming back. This is a rendering of what the interior of the cafe will look like and the counter. We're getting more stores, so 33% increase in retail square footage. We're doing that through moving all of our offices and storage that are on the retail sales floor into the basement, which is completely being revamped. We're gaining 100 linear feet of grocery and 100 linear feet of refrigerated grocery. Getting nearly twice as much bulk. So this is a rendering of the revised bulk section. We're getting increased operational efficiencies, including the addition of a hydraulic lift. For anybody who has worked at the co-op or been around the co-op, we currently use a forklift to carry things from the ground floor up to the sales floor. And when you're doing that outside in bad conditions, it's a pretty dicey way to operate. We're also doing a bump out for the Shop for Me program, our curbside program, so that we can grow that program and expand and do more to serve our community through that program. So these are the big takeaways. These are the outcomes that we're hoping to get out of the project. So the cafe returning, more space for more products, safer work conditions, more efficient operations, and more space for the Shop for Me program to grow. And on to John. Sure. Go for it.
Just pass me the clicker.
Oh, the clicker. Sorry.
The clicker. All right, all right.
John Kruger is our treasurer.
All right, you can hear me? Yeah, good. Well, look, thanks for showing up on a Friday night. I'll tell you, on a personal note, this is no easy task being on your finance committee. And I can speak for myself and the other members. This is a huge responsibility. You know, we're talking about a tremendous amount of information that we've had to look at over the last couple of years. We've had to review different costs, different locations, predictions on our future sales and margins, market studies, bank loans, contingencies. I mean, it's been a lot of responsibility, and I just almost feel personal to put my name on something. I can speak for myself and the finance committee. We are unanimous in our belief that this is the right thing to go, but there's some risks, and this is what we feel is the proper way. And I'm going to try to give some numbers tonight to not only illustrate what we've gone through in those last couple of years, but I also don't expect you're going to take every number and understand it all, but I want you to know that it's all available. And I just want to be very transparent here and letting you see the numbers that we've used. So we have a sort of a team approach here, and I want to let you know, like, who really worked a lot on this. We're fortunate that we've got two past treasurers of our board, Ernie Cooper and Jim Miller, who's out there in the back, who've been through this story before and been really helpful. We also have Matt McConnell, who isn't here tonight. He coaches basketball, but I'll tell you, he's been a solid member, and he's been with us for like 3 years going over the numbers. He's a businessman himself. And we're lucky to have, we're basically sharing with the Johnny Selected Seeds, a farm manager, Colin Thompson here, who adds some youth to our team and some nice ideas, because Jim and I will certainly say we're not as young as Colin. We wish we were. I'll say that. So anyways, we also we're lucky to have a worker, Gina Ferrando, who's on our team. So anyways, and of course, Valerie and Susan, participate in everything that goes on here. So I want to give you a little idea. There are other members on this team as well. And actually, I was going to say something when I got started here, and I forgot. You got to get warmed up, when you stand and talk. But one of the things I did want to say is that we had a great year last year. Was one of the sort of requirements that we've all been saying as a board, that we should be having certain success before we start something like this. But we had almost 5% sales growth last year, almost 2% profit, and a great gross margin. So it was sort of a solid way to continue. Coming through the pandemic and all, it was just another one of these, oh my gosh, I hope this works out well. So who else is on this team? One of the things that Doug didn't mention too much, I think the set of contractors that we're working with are pretty exceptional. He mentioned Warren Construction. They built the Portland Co-op and did a nice job there. We're also looking at some really, Ernie and I have both met, with the construction team. And we're talking about some people that really have their heart in this. They're looking for this to be a success, not only for us, but for them as well. They really work hard, sharpen their pencils. And we're trying to do as much value engineering as we can so that this thing, works out. I mean, obviously, one of our concerns was, gosh, how are we going to even manage a store while we're, construction at the same time? And they're talking about some systems. Some of our equipment, HVAC, is going to actually be moved outside. We're going to be using the downstairs so that we can prepare quickly when we start moving things in upstairs. We'll have the foundation set, electrical, mechanical, all fittings already set from the bottom floor to run upstairs. But we're also looking to consolidate the construction time. We're finding that some of the parts we need now have over a 9-month pipeline. So rather than starting early and then waiting for parts to show up, we're going to try to condense some of the construction time, so be a little more efficient. Another thing I wanted to mention is the fact that as a co-op, we have a lot of partners here. We're not all on our own here. The National Cooperative Grocers, where we get a lot of our produce from, has a development cooperative as well. And they've done designs for other co-ops going through a similar renovation project. So we're using not only their expertise, but they've also developed a pro forma, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but sort of a mathematical algorithm where you put in a lot of information and it makes predictions on how well they think the co-op will look going out 10 and 12 years. Another team member are our banks. When you think about it, we're not going with a large commercial bank. We're going with cooperative banks. And indeed, with CFNE, the Cooperative Fund in New England, we're going to be one of their larger clients at this point. So they're putting a lot of their money on the line because they think that this is going to work. But they've also scrutinized our process quite a lot too. But they are a team. They're into this in many ways as much as we. They're putting up a lot of money. And one more thing I wanted to say about the team part of it here is, a couple more things actually, is that we're going to buy a lot of our equipment through UNFI. who sells to other co-ops. So we have a marketing advantage here. We're getting price reductions because of the volume that are being sold to co-ops across the country. And I guess, and there's one last part of the team, and that's our workers. I've been to their annual meeting, and they're excited. They're a strong team. All right, so these things can get sort of subjective. A lot of people think, well, this would be a nice idea. This would be even a better idea. And we've been talking about lots of ideas over the years. Unfortunately, as we've been spending a lot of time debating good choices, the price has been just going up with inflation and with the problems with finding labor and parts. But we needed some sort of an objective way that we can measure what is a successful operation. And this is where we come into a pro forma. And I think I described it briefly, but we needed to have something that we put numbers in, and we got predictions in terms of where we're going to be in time. So we're using a pro forma that was actually developed by the National Cooperative Grocers Development Cooperative, NCGDC. And this is actually a product that they've used in other renovation projects. So what is a pro forma? It's a measuring tool. Basically, you put in information, and some of it is information that's hypothetical. Like, what do you think they're going to be for salary increases over the next 12 years? What do we think we're going to have for an increase in sales? How about our sales during construction periods? How do we factor in, paying back our loans? How do we take into contingencies? I mean, you get the idea. We're talking about a lot of factors that can have an effect, okay, on your productivity, so you can pay back your loans and be successful. So what it is, we put in all these numbers, and it looks like a huge spreadsheet if you were to take a look at it, but it has summaries, which are kind of graphs, and they'll show things like how many days of cash will you have on hand is a good example. And I'll show some of these as we get into the numbers. So what I'm going to go through now is someone I warned you about. It's going to be a bunch of numbers. And I say that I'll leave them up here, but we're not going to go through every line of numbers, but they will be available. And I'll certainly be around, as will our finance committee, if people want to talk more specifically. This one I'll leave up for a little longer because it's a summary. And I think it's what everybody really wanted to see in many ways. This is where you see we're looking at almost $6.4 million cost for this project. That's a lot. One of the things that I need to say in this is that $6.4 million is really more like $6.1 million. I'm going to play with numbers here, but we're also including existing debt. We already have some debt right now, and we've included that in this cost. So in other words, we're looking at the full picture of what we have as a co-op going forward. The top part are basically going to be your sources, and the bottom part are all the uses. And obviously they both come up to the same. I'm going to try to talk a little bit about both of these sections. I'm going to leave this up just for a little while longer so that you can have a chance to see it. Notice one of the things there, the cash. We've actually got some $923,000 in the bank right now. It's cash. It's money that we've saved to use for this project. So, we have been planning on this. I'm gonna go a little bit more into the sources in a separate, and I'm also going to cover the uses in separate graphs. So I'm going to move forward here. So you can see the sources here, on top of the cash that we're putting in. We're anticipating a senior debt here, which we call senior debt, and that it's commercial. And you'll also see that we've got a capital campaign, which is certainly something we need to talk about tonight. I'm very pleased to see that the lending institutions that we've chosen are fairly local and are also very, very in tune to our project. Now, I'm looking at CEI in particular, and I was on the MOFCA board. I worked with CEI, on a number of occasions. And CEI is an excellent example of a Maine community development financial institution. They create good jobs, sustainability, and they really look for rural areas where they can develop. And I mean, I think we actually with CFNE have found that there were other banks that thought this was an example of a project they wanted to be part of. They see that this is a sort of a trend that they are absolutely excited about. So that helps a lot as we're going forward here. Okay, now we're talking about some of the uses here. Certainly one of the areas of concern has been the contingency there. You see that shows 9%. Actually, that number is the contingency we put on top of everything else. I think the real contingency is more in the 12 to 15%. I know we had about, I think $560,000 in contingency that we put on top of everything, but our partners, like the construction people, for instance, have put contingencies on their own work as well. So again, there's hopes here that we've got the cost pretty finalized at this point. Obviously we're still sharpening the pencil. A large part of the cost is going to be equipment. Anybody that's been in our store, been in the dairy department, there's this sort of a black door there. The door fell off. Now, I'm not exactly proud of this, but it's and it fell off on somebody that's here. He's here just to make sure I say that. But it's an example. If we want to be an efficient operation that we can all be proud of, and that our food is being stored at the proper temperatures, we've got to have good equipment, and we really don't at this stage. And this is really a large part of the cost for this project. No matter where you put it in town, there's going to be a large cost to having the proper amount of equipment. And we've talked about having a forklift outside. I think about it from a liability perspective. What if a pallet fell off, during icy weather? I mean, that's pretty serious. I'd like to see us have efficient heating and cooling systems as well. Uses. Now, here, of course, 56% are improvements. I think you'll notice that there's about $1 million here just in mechanical and electrical work. So, I mean, I think you'll see in this, and it's really hard to go through here and see how every portion of this is figured out. Like finishes there, $450,000. I really couldn't explain that to you very well, all right? But these are numbers that can be itemized by each of the contractors, and we try to put this in a summary form here. But it certainly includes some of the elevator, certainly includes the HVAC systems that we really need to have for an efficient operation. And again, on the uses, and these are probably small numbers for people to see, though they're big numbers if you look at them from a cash perspective. But we want to show where this money is going into the different departments. So where you get your food, and in just about every place that you go in that store where you buy your food, you're going to see there's going to be improvements. And that's really what I'm trying to illustrate here, is that need. The store, the whole store needs improvements. It wasn't an easy case to say. I know initially we thought, oh, it'd be great. Why don't we just put an elevator in? And why don't we go and fix this? But the more you look into place, it really needs to be fixed from the bottom up. So I'm not going to dwell on these numbers, but I wanted to illustrate our transparency here. All right, well, now we're getting down to what we're learning from the pro forma. And this is a graph of days of cash on hand. And that's important because you're paying your bills. You want to be able to pay your bills and say, in this case, we're saying 12 days of cash on hand is sort of the benchmark here. And you need to have enough money that you can pay your bills and pay our farmers, for instance, that are supplying us with our food. Now, you see, it's off the chart there at the beginning. You say, what in the heck's all that about? Well, in the first year, we're hoping to have, $6 million in money that we're going to spend on building the facility. So that's a lot of cash on hand that we're going to have. But you're going to see it's going to plummet very quickly when we put that money to work and rebuild the store, which we're hoping will be over a period of hopefully less than a year's time. The important thing to watch, though, is what happens as you go out 10 and 12 years. We have about 41 days of cash on hand right now. But then again, in our peer group, we look pretty good, even compared to other co-ops across the country. One of the things that our finance committee looks at every month is how we compare with other food co-ops. But you see that that's a very good number right there. We have looked at other options that we put the numbers through the pro forma, and it didn't look so good. We've had at least one or two options that we looked at. The days of cash on hand got down below the 12, magic benchmark. Now, debt service coverage ratio, I'm not sure that's a term that very many people look at, but it really relates to our ability to accept debt. And it's important as businesses look at this. They basically take all your cash that's available. You get to subtract things like interest and taxes, amortization, and depreciation, but it's your actual cash that you're bringing in, and then you divide it by how much you owe. So here a benchmark is usually like a number like 1.2, I think, is a benchmark that's used. So look, you see that the first year is below that benchmark, and that's when the first year on any big loan with senior debt is to be expected. We've just borrowed, $4 million, from banks, and another $1.5 million. You can't expect to be sitting there in the first 2 years of your operation, particularly as you're rebuilding the facility, to have that good ratio. One of the things you'll look at as you go out at 8, 10, and 12, there are more dips. And you say, what are those all about? Well, that's when we're paying back our loans to you owners, okay? We do plan on paying everybody back. Yeah, that is our plan. Some of our other alternatives that they looked at did not look like we would be paying back our owners. There just wasn't going to be enough money made given the cost. See, Susan's looking at her watch. Yeah, and so she's keeping track. She's telling me I got to hold the thing closer to my mouth. You just can't win here. But I wanted to talk a little bit, since we are talking finances here, and it is important. People, that are investing money nowadays are often looking at things. They call them ESG funds. They're all over the place now. They're mutual funds. They claim that they don't purchase any fossil fuels. They'll all tell you Microsoft is considered an ESG. It doesn't meet the criteria that I would think of that we look at when we're talking about sustainability. And I put down the cooperative investor is an ESG. It's planet, people, and prosperity. One of the things that we're looking for here, and this very important part of this conversation, is today we're looking at the importance of you as owners to participate in this process. We have found senior debt that are cooperatives that lend to cooperatives, but for this to even meet our definition of being a co-op, it needs to have members that contribute equally, okay, and democratically, and not just, we're not looking to bring in a couple, few investors. We're looking for our owners to participate in this process. And it's also important that we take into concern the community itself that we're trying to serve here. So, I mean, to me, a big part of this conversation right now and our ability to go forward is totally dependent on you as owners. Are we representing you here? Is this something that you want? And then will you support us? And I'm going to leave that as a segue. Actually, I have minutes left. Now, is that what you're telling me? No. Oh, that was 5 minutes ago when you told me I was done. All right. All right. So I'm going to segue this off, and thank you very much.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Valerie, and I'm going to be talking about the capital campaign. I don't have a PowerPoint, and that's an old picture, but I'm really proud to be here tonight with all of you and to be part of this community. So first of all, we're talking about funding the project, a $6.4 million project. You heard we're going to be having a loan from the Cooperative Fund of the Northeast and its affiliates of $4 million. We've got substantial cash on hand. We'll use $923,000 of that. So that leaves $1.5 million that we want to raise in owner loans. Okay. So we've been in this quiet phase of the capital campaign before we are about to launch over the next week or so. And during this quiet phase, we've been talking to board members, staff, people we know who are very devoted to the co-op, people that I know in particular, and just one person making some phone calls and talking to those individuals. People have stepped up with $650,000 in pledges for loans to the co-op for this particular project. So we're looking, yay. And it's because people love the co-op, and it's because somebody picked up the phone and asked them. And so we're putting together a wonderful team of people who are very excited about making phone calls to 4,000 members, people that we have phone numbers for. We have an appeal letter going out early this week. We've been doing social media posts. You probably know there was a press release that was picked up by our local newspapers. There was a wonderful article in both papers this week. There's been, and you'll see more and more signage in the store. If you'll take a look down here, you'll see a giant carrot, and that carrot will be the indicator in the store to show where we've gotten to in owner loans. So I'll explain the loan program to you for just a minute. We want to get to your questions and have that good discussion, so I'll try and be quick. For the loans, we're asking for a $2,000 minimum loan, and each owner can choose their terms of 8 years at 3% interest, 10 years at 3.5% interest, or 12 years at 4% interest. And of the people that I've been talking to, many of them have said, this seems like a better bet than the stock market right now. We've got a really volatile stock market. We explain these are unsecured loans, and there's massive documentation that each lender will receive, each potential lender will receive from our attorneys that emphasizes the risk involved in making this loan and that they are unsecured. Still, people have a lot of confidence because of the work that the Finance Committee has done, and being able to know that we've been audited and that we have this pro forma, and that our consultants are super conservative in how they evaluate these projects. And we've been also talking to a number of co-ops similar to our size that have been through similar projects and learned from them. The timeline is that we need to reach our ultimate goal of $1.5 million by April 16th. There's a certain length of time that we have legally to do this work. Actually, in 10 days, we want to reach the goal of 750,000. And I said we've got 650 in pledges so far. We need to get another 100,000 within the next 10 days because Doug wants to buy some equipment and he needs to put a deposit down. And in order to that, we need to have closed on the bank loan. So we're going to be ramping up. Our wonderful campaign coordinator, consultant, Patty McKenna, standing at the back of the room there, is really helping us. Her husband, Larry, where's Larry? He's not in the room, is our data guru. We have a fantastic system on HubSpot to collect all this data as we're reaching out to owners. And we're confident that we're going to get there. So we're going to hit the ground running. There are other ways of participating. If you're choosing not to do the loan program, there will be an option eventually to make tax deductible donations. And yes, absolutely. So, okay.
So we're actually going to have the questions at in a few minutes. So if you can hold on to your thoughts, that would be great.
Thank you. Thank you. So for those who don't want to lend, but want to continue to support the co-op, keep shopping because there's going to be disruption. We're going to be in the middle of a renovation and we're going to keep operating throughout. So everybody keep shopping. That's wonderful. Talk to your friends and neighbors, encourage them to participate. You can even encourage them to join. I do want to mark that for people who want to lend, they have to have been a member by January 16th. That is the date that the offering memorandum becomes effective. And legally, we can't ask or allow anybody to lend after that date because they shouldn't have joined in order to lend. It's, some esoteric things I'm learning about all of this. So before you leave the meeting, if you're interested in reviewing the offering memorandum, purchase agreement, promissory note, Patty's standing back there. She has copies that you can take with you. You could also fill them out if you decide to lend and return them either by mail or to customer service. For those on Zoom, in order to get an offering memorandum to review, you can request a packet by email at capitalcampaign@belfast.coop. And that I think is in the chat, perhaps, or could be. And of course, anyone can pick up any member can pick up a packet anytime at customer service. Anyone who wants to pledge $2,000 or more tonight, you can see me. I'll happily talk to you. Or if you'd like to talk to me further about it, I have cards available and you can call me or email me anytime. And that's it. I think we now have a very short video, is that right? Of some testimonials, and then we'll get to Q&A. And we'll be here as long as we need to be here to make sure that all your questions and comments are shared.
I'm Susan Cutting, and I am investing in the Belfast Community Co-op because I see the co-op as the heart of our local economy. It is a primary retail source for local organic food and other products, and I think helping the co-op make these critical infrastructure updates is an investment in our future local economy and also the future health and connectivity of our community.
I support the Belfast Community Co-op because the co-op supports its community through programs like the Common Sense program.
I'm investing in the co-op as a way to invest in our town's future. It is a safe, welcome space for all, and I want to support the growth and safety of the building to support the growth and safety of our community as well.
The renovation of the Belfast Community Co-op will help my team in a variety of ways. The first is we're going to gain a large increase in sales footage for the grocery section and the refrigerated section, which means we can bring in a lot more new and exciting products, and additionally take advantage of any new programs that we want to take advantage of that present themselves. Secondly, we'll be getting a freight elevator, which will improve our receiving practices from a safety perspective and from an efficiency perspective. We can impact trucks faster, receive them faster, and get them on the shelves faster, which will be really exciting. And additionally, the renovation will just make the building safer for my team to work in so they can thrive and do even more than what they're doing now, which is also really exciting. So thank you, and thank you for your support.
Hi, I'm Jane. I'm the Prepared Foods Manager at Belfast Community Co-op, and I wanted to tell you all a little bit about how the renovation is going to help my department. First and foremost, the most important to me is that it's going to help improve safety for our employees. Right now, we have outgrown the space that we're in, And because of that, we're forced to do some things that are a little bit less than optimal for safety, like storing things up high above our heads and just being generally crowded in the kitchen, which increases the risk of accidents happening. And as you've seen on the plans, the new store is going to be much larger. We'll have room for safe storage practices and also for just a safer workspace for everybody. So to me, that's very high on the list, and I'm sure it is for you all too, to keep our workers safe. And another very exciting aspect is that we'll be able to make it a better place for our customers. So we're bringing the cafe back, which is very exciting. That's going to allow us to have a community gathering space again. And as the Belfast Community Co-op, I think that's really important, that we have a gathering space where people can come, spend not a lot of money, and be able to meet friends and sit down and just interact with other folks in the community. And as far as menu options, we'll have a lot of new exciting options coming out. We'll have hot food again, hot soups, and just be able to offer more to our customers, more to our owners, and just more to the community in general. So I'm very excited about the renovation. It's going to be a great thing for Pratt Foods.
I'm supporting the Belfast Community Co-op because I believe in keeping my money local, and I love supporting local farmers, makers, and workers.
Thank you. So next we're moving on to our Q&A session. And so Deb Burwell is facilitating this part of it. Thank you, Deb. And Emily is going to be recording, taking notes of questions and comments. So we'll keep track of all of that.
Susan, we actually had, there's some workers in the room that were hoping to stand up and speak if that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'd like to, if you're willing, I'd like Michael Walter, our store operations manager, and Gina Ferrendo, our store service manager, to come up and speak. And then Heather Q, who is our IT and e-commerce manager, who is also doing IT today, have some words to say as well.
Hi. Can everyone hear me? Thank you so much for coming out tonight. As you can tell by the data that the board has presented, they've been working on this for an extremely long time. No stone overturned, or whatever the colloquialism is. I'm not good at this. But we've really thought about this, and I think I'm up here tonight to represent our workers. I am the store operations manager. And so the people you heard up there, Evans and Jane and everybody else there, is just so excited by this opportunity. All of our staff, all of our workers put their heart and soul into the co-op every day. And I think that's a big part of what makes it so special, along with you as the owners. And I cannot think of anything more exciting for them than to have a new building to work in, new things to show off. It's just nice working in a new space with new equipment. The next time you're in shopping, I implore you to just kind of look around. One of our dairy coolers is, the door fell off, I believe, on your husband. Sorry about that. Not strategically done. But we have a black shade up over a door right now. I mean, that's not who we are, right? We're more proud of our co-op than that. So we're very excited to do that. The cafe is coming back. That's huge. I want to promise all of you and all of our owners that I and our entire workforce, our entire staff, will do right by you, do right by your investment, and make the Belfast Community Co-op continue to be the best co-op in the country. So thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Hi, everyone. I am Gina Ferrendo. I am the store service manager, and I oversee the facility aspect and the customer experience. And from my perspective, I'm very excited for the safety upgrades that we're having done, and also the facility upgrades, because it's a lot to keep up with. Our facilities department works so hard to keep us going. And over the last couple of months, I've been working closely with each department, working on safety in the workplace. What can we do? And as we're going through each department, I'm hearing a lot of chatter about, well, this is the way we do it now, but this is going to be post renovation. And everybody's working so hard. As we've grown and expanded over the years, it's been really piecemealed. And moving forward, this renovation has been thought out by a team of professionals. Everything is just, it's very laid out. Customer experience has been thought of, safety, worker experience. And this is going to make a huge difference for the entire staff, the entire community. So on behalf of all of the workers, I want to thank you for being here and for supporting us. Heather?
Hi, I am Heather Hay. I am the IT and e-commerce manager at the Belfast Community Co-op. Because I'm IT and e-commerce, there's kind of two very different things that I'm looking forward to. As you can imagine, this building was not built for technology. We have, hemmed it into the rafters over the years, and really renovating the building is going to be really great for the stuff that is behind the scenes that make your shopping experience easier. I'm doing my job if nothing breaks and you guys have a good time and get out, get your stuff and get out the door without getting mad at the registers. But on the kind of more public face of what I do, I manage the Shop for Me, our curbside program, and having we currently live in the cafe, which is, something that everyone misses. We miss it a lot too. Every single day we have people, walking into our office and asking us why the cafe isn't there. And we want to bring it back so soon for everyone. It's also a lot that we've done in Shop for Me is providing for the community that can't come into the store. For the last 2 years, we've been kind of that lifeline of the community into the co-op feel, and people still having that connection. So we're looking forward to continuing to do that in a better environment. We'll be able to expand as our prepared foods department expands. We can offer quick lunches and a quick in and out for people. We're hoping to offer delivery. So there's a lot that we're looking forward to in the renovation as well. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for supporting us through all of these crazy times and into the future.
I will be taking it around. So just as Linda suggested, we're going to try to ensure that all voices get heard, and that includes the people who are online as well as the people in the room. So we're going to alternate between the two because it takes perseverance both to come out on a Friday night and also to hang out online during something like this. So I just want to say thank you. And we're, Colin and I are your facilitators, and we're going to move back and forth on doing that. So we're going to ask you to raise your hands, and I'm going to come around and ask you to say your name and say your question. So I would like us to start, if there is a question online, Colin, just because I really appreciate the people online. It takes a little extra to hang out. Is there a question there?
Yeah, there are a few that we can start with. One very easy to answer one. Paul Sheridan asked how many member owners are in the room because there are 29 online. I would say around 35, 40 people in the room. So looks like we have almost as many online as we do in person, which is great.
Super.
And maybe a one that I won't take, but I'll pass along because I think it's a great question. Neva Allen asked regarding sort of a design topic. Do you have an accessibility committee? Every entrance should have should be as accessible as possible. Plus all the products should be accessible, the cafe, restroom, etc.
I'll take that. Do we have an accessibility committee? We do not. I will say though that the designers that we're working with, the architects that we're working with, are very much thinking about accessibility, not just all aspects of accessibility. So, and they're these are people who have done amazing commercial and retail buildings over time. So yeah, there's definitely a mind there's definitely attention being paid to accessibility. It's a good question.
So I'm going to zip to one in the room then, if that's all right. So I want to ask, who's ready with the question? Excellent. Want to say your name?
My name is Cindy Canavan, and I don't think I've heard this answer yet, which is how long do you think it's going to take for the renovation? And when will this renovation start?
Thank you.
I'll take that too. Okay, how long will it take? I think as John alluded to in his piece, a lot of the timeline of this project is hinging on the lead times on the pieces of equipment that we need for the project. So we're in a really unique period. Like, we're taking on a project at a time where, for some of the refrigeration equipment, it's 40 weeks. And for something that we weren't anticipating, we knew that refrigeration was going to take a while, but some of the electrical pieces that we need for the building are a similar timeline. So, initially the budget and the timeline that we have been working with with our general contractor was about a 12-month schedule. We're shrinking that. Hopefully we're going to be able to shrink that back to about an 8-month schedule, and it would start again, hopefully in May. Yeah, and be complete, 8 months, 9 months, 12 months out.
So did you want to go with a question from someone online, and then I've got someone here, and you'll be right after that person.
Sure. This one will probably end up with Doug again. Sorry to put you on the spot so much. Paul Sheridan asks, will the hydraulic lift be enclosed from weather?
It will be, yeah. So there was a slide that I showed. I'm sorry, I went through slides really quickly and talked really fast. It'll have a tunnel, built around it, a sleeve. We've also, part of our value engineering piece right now, we're looking at different possibilities with that hydraulic lift. We could potentially move it inside, but that would be, there would be a lot of shifting around that we would have to do. So I think right now, the thing that makes sense is to build an exterior building around it.
Great, and we've got a question here. Say your name.
Linda Luna Cote. Some of you know me as Luna. Well, I'm going to ask a couple of, financial type questions, more about the projections. Do the projections, or how do the projections take into consideration unstable conditions in the world? And the other one would be, how do the projections take into consideration shortages?
So by shortages, you want to say what you mean by that?
Product shortages, not shortages that Doug already addressed, but, periodically products aren't available. So in Unfi, I believe, is one of the suppliers that has trouble with that.
Well, that's a hard question to answer. And I don't know if I really have a great answer. We do build in a contingency, of course. Contingencies are generally there for the unexpected to take. We're not talking about, well, we put a contingency. Well, I thought it was only going to cost $50,000. Well, it turned out costing 60. That's not the sort of contingency that we've been looking for, in our pro forma. The true contingencies are, I guess, would be along the lines of what you're talking about. Things didn't work out the way you expected to not our fault, outside of our control. And when we look at looking out, as I say, the 12 days of cash on hand, I mean, if it turned out to be half of what we were thinking it was going to be at 10 years, it would still be twice the 12 days of cash on hand. And as we're getting up into the 30 days of cash on hand as we go out 8 and 10 years. But I can't tell you definitively here. I mean, this is why I wake up sometimes a little early in the morning and feel, well, the weight of this project. We've asked similar questions. Well, Doug has certainly, worked this out pretty well with NCGDC. You know, they Blackburn, in fact, we know these people by first name because these are questions that we want answers for. But I don't know, maybe Doug.
And
Yeah.
did you want to clarify?
No, I think, I thought, I was going to clarify, but I think I heard you say, John, that contingency isn't really about the future.
Right.
It's about the projects. But the future is all these projections assuming certain things. And so that's why I was asking, were some of these things considered in the projections?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little bit to the distribution question, right? So how would that be accounted for in a pro forma model? So a pro forma model is taking, pretty basic data and it's projecting it out 10 years, right? And I would say where things like growth, where sales growth are concerned on the pro forma, it's very conservative. Like John just mentioned, last year we had 5% sales growth. I think in the model, we're projecting out 2% over time, right? So that's one way. So being conservative in your expectations of what the performance of the project is going to be, that's one way to account for that. When it comes to shortages and disruptions, the one thing I will say about our team, about our purchasing team, and about the people that work for the co-op right now, they are exceptional at being able to work within those shortages. So I would say when during the pandemic, when there were legitimate shortages, you would not know that if you went into the co-op. So you would go into Hannaford and see entire aisles that were empty, and you'd come into the co-op and we had full shelves. And all of that is because the people who were buying for those departments, the people who were sourcing those things from different distributors, like they are so good and so on their game that I know that we can't predict what is going to happen with recessions and with shortages of different products. But as long as you have dedicated people running that cooperative and running it profitably and running it earnestly, I think that we are in a good position.
Great.
And John has one more thing to add.
Valerie always keeps me right on my feet here, doesn't she? Well, one of the things that the board has asked the finance committee to do, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it earlier, I don't know, is that we do a stress test where we start putting in numbers. Well, what if? As Doug mentioned, only a 2% growth is what we're talking about here. But we stressed it out, and Jim and Ernie and Colin and I and Matt would try to think of ways that we could mess it up. And, what would it take to mess it up? And we tried, we really did. But it looks pretty solid. We think the numbers that we're using are conservative. We didn't pick, let's assume we're going to have a 5% increase in sales every year. We chose 2%. The same thing, we put in good amounts, I think, for we took into account salaries, which is certainly an issue, for our workers, that we're taking that into account. But as I say, I can't promise that if we've taken into account everything, but we've tried.
Great. Thanks, John. Colin, do you have a question from online? And then I've got another person here in the audience.
Maybe I could add one other thing too that I like to think about when we're evaluating the pro forma. It not only tells us what will work, but going through these stress tests allow us to find the conditions in which things fail. And so then as we evaluate progress over time, we have a better sense of if we're getting into a period where we need to start worrying. And also we can build in contingencies in the plan itself and take different approaches because we know the alternative when run through the pro forma just did not work. So it's a really powerful tool and we are relying on it pretty heavily. Just a definition here. Paul Sheridan wants to know, what is the meaning of the word senior in senior debt?
You can do that, or I can do that.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Senior debt takes priority over other types of debt. So if you look at the type of loans that we're looking for, we have our primary lenders, and those are going to take priority over other types of financing that we might be seeking elsewhere.
Great. Thank you. And we have a question here in the audience. You want to say your name?
Christopher Roden. Yeah, I wanted to address the construction timeline and the impact on the operation of the co-op while all that's going on.
Yeah.
And I was just had a suggestion, which is I think the least impactful, and if you're going to start construction, the least impactful area is well, we used to call it a deli. It's now being called a cafe, but that would be, it's the most out of the way of the rest of the operation, especially now that it's not being used as a cafe. So I just thought it might be good to put that high on the list. And as I recall, the deli cafe operations were always the most profitable part. So as you're talking about spending money, get that done quickly and start making money.
Thank you.
I will talk staging a little bit. So the team that we're working with, especially the folks at National Co-op Grocers that we're working with, like I said, who have done, hundreds of these projects across the nation. Our goal from the get-go has always been to not lose a day of sales. So staging the project, and right now we're looking at 3 different stages. The first stage being a lot of the work that's going on in the basement, a lot of the refrigeration and production and storage that's going to take place in the basement, and then working up on the sales floor and doing things at sections. Fingers crossed, we're not gonna have to close any, right? There may be days when you switch over from, we're bringing in a larger capacity electrical. Like if you were ever down in our electrical room and see what we're dealing with as far as where the power comes into the building, it's original. It's 1960s era, right? And we are so lucky. There's one thing that I will say about my time with the co-op, and probably everybody else who has worked at the co-op. We are so lucky that we have been able to stay open and operate, and that we are where we are, and that we've been able to grow the way that we have grown in that building, because there's some things that really, really, really need to be addressed. So yeah, so as far as staging goes, yeah. So I would say, I think the plan right now is to start with the basement, then move up on the sales floor, try to stay open the entire time. When there's big things like switching over the plumbing, switching over the refrigeration, switching over electrical, there may be disruptions there, but we're gonna try our darndest to stay open the whole time, Chris.
Great. Let's go for a question from online, Colin.
They caught up online. So folks, if you do have questions online, please send them directly to me. But for now,
great.
Hand it back to you.
Here we go. If you want to say your name. Sure. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Wiley, and I have a question. Understanding that all communities are different, I'm curious anecdotally what you've lessons learned from the Blue Hill co-op project and Rockland. What kind of takeaways and wisdom have you gained from studying those projects?
Thanks for that question. And I can tell you a little bit about what I learned from 5 New England co-ops, similar size, including Blue Hill, related to capital campaigns. And these were conversations that we had early on, and we're continuing to stay in touch and kind of check in and say, this is where we've pivoted. What do you think of that? But early on, especially with Blue Hill, their experience kind of to the negative confirmed that we want to do things a little differently than they did. So they opened up for donations in addition to loans quite early. And as a result, many people turned to giving a small donation, or maybe not so small, maybe $250 or $500, and felt like I just did a great thing for my co-op, but didn't really have the education and outreach from the co-op about the loan possibilities. So for instance, our Colluminate consultant had described a scenario to me that actually happened exactly as he described it. I was in the store, a neighbor came up to me, said, I understand you're working on the capital campaign. My husband and I would be glad to donate $250, which was the number that Ben used in his example. And I said, oh, actually, Kathy, we're really focused on this loan program. The minimum loan is $2,000, and this is how the terms and the interest work. And she took a breath and she said, oh, we could do that. So that's just one of the things that we've learned from the other co-ops that we're talking to.
Anecdotally, I will say, if you've been in one co-op, then you've been in one co-op. That every community is a little bit different, right? So Blue Hill, right? So it is a vastly different project. They went from a 1,500 square foot store to a 7,000 square foot store. And I think that the growing pains that they had, I mean, there are lessons to be learned there, but this is not that. We are not quadrupling our size. Rockland, I think that co-op, I think similar to where this co-op has been talking about expansion for a really, really, really long time. What I would say they are lacking and why that project hasn't really taken hold is because there hasn't been consistency of leadership at that co-op. I think in order to do something and get a community behind a project and get a board and workers and get everybody aligned around something, there has to be some consistency, and that co-op has struggled with that. They have a new general manager, and I've met with her, and she seems great, and I really hope that she can pull that team together. But yeah.
Great. I'm just aware of the fact that we're going back and forth between in the room and online. So do you have an online question? And I have someone waiting here, and then you'll be next.
Yeah, and I just want to say quickly to the folks in the Zoom chat room, if you submitted a question earlier and it went to the host, the IT host, as opposed directly to me, I cannot see those questions. So if you submitted them earlier, please send them to me again. I have two questions and actually comments from Paul Sheridan and from Neva Allen regarding accessibility and pinch points. Paul Sheridan says, is there an updated revised plan for the shopping floor? I worry about watching those pinch points. 4 feet is not enough for 2 people to pass by each other with or without shopping, stocking carts, strollers, wheelchairs, etc. Try for a 6-foot minimum. And then Neva had another comment. I want to request that the design team have a person who has mobility challenges on the team, because people who do not face these challenges can be blind to what is needed and make things in places accessible. People need to be able to go down the food aisles without blocking other people, and the cafe needs to be accessible around the tables, etc.
As far as to Paul's question, the most up-to-date plan, we can get that up on the website. What we have out in the lobby is the most up-to-date plan, I believe. And to Neva's point, that's a wonderful suggestion, and I will certainly bring that to the architects and to the designers, because yeah, firsthand experience, absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I add one other thing too? Because a comment just came in that was also related to that. Karen Gliso commented, I'm still seeing corners in some areas, especially into the back of the kitchen area. And similarly, did we have someone come in to assess the plan for disability access, both for workers and for shoppers who have limited vision and or limited mobility? So all very important things.
Great. Here you go. If you want to say your name.
Sure. I'm Sasha. I have a question about the Shop for Me program. I know that there was a lot of Shop for Me clearly at one time. Now we're down to 1 parking spot. So does that mean that there are less people doing it? And when we're talking about growing the Shop for Me and putting a really large portion of the expansion towards the Shop for Me, are we doing this based on need, or are we doing this based on like the new normal that perhaps lots of people will need to shop in the future online?
Thank you.
Are you okay if I take that? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's a couple different things there. So yeah, when we first launched Shop for Me, there was definitely if you, and I've shared this with the board, if you map out the, number of customers, number of sales, all of that, definitely a big peak during the pandemic. And then it is kind of leveled out right around 3%, 3% of store sales going through Shop For Me. What I will say about Shop For Me is I believe that it is an investment in the future. It's an investment in where the markets are going. And anytime you look at national trends, you look at what the needs of our community are. We have an aging community. The people that take advantage of Shop For Me are going to continue to take advantage of Shop For Me. And I think that there's so much potential for where that program can go. I think it is worthy of an investment. I think that it is an investment that, if we're willing to put some resources in, could actually help us serve the needs of many more people in this community. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to check, is there an online question or you're okay going ahead? Here you go. Willow.
Oh, sure.
If you want to say your name.
My name's Willow, and this just came from the comment that was behind me. I didn't see who gave it, but about the Blue Hill Co-op. I haven't shopped there much, but had before they renovated and after, and noticed that their prices were a lot higher after the renovation. And I don't know the details, but it just planted the question of how might this project and the debt of this project increase or prices and profit margin needs and things like that.
So I think that the issue with the Blue Hill Co-op, right? And, I've talked to their manager about this. I think when they went from that small store who had, I remember looking at, well, I probably can't give out their financials. I know what their margin was when it was at that small store. And when you take that small margin and you apply it across the board to a huge store without any variation within the margin, then it looks like everything is crazy expensive, right? If we are doing our job right, this project, there shouldn't be increases in sales because our sales margin is the margin that we apply to products is the margin that we apply to products, right? We set that margin so that we can account for all of our personnel costs, all of our equipment costs. What this project costs has nothing to do with what it has nothing to do with what things in the store are going to cost if we're doing everything well. Yeah, so I even though it looks like that at the Blue Hill Co-op, I think that they have done a lot in the last year to try to bring some of the variable margins on the products down so that you're not doing a blanket one margin for everything. So yeah, all of our sub-department, I mean, not to get too deep into grocery, but every one of our sub-departments have set margins that they work on and variable margins within those departments on what different products within there so that it can reach a certain price. Go ahead. Grocery.
Because I learned this and I want to share it. So because I'm talking to people about loans, they're asking me lots of fantastic questions, just like yours. And what I learned from Doug and from our Colluminate consultant is that because we're going to have this, more linear feed of shelf space and we're going to have more product, it'll actually put us into the next tier with our distributor, which lowers our cost with our distributor. So if you see prices increase, you're probably going to be seeing something related to inflation, but not due to the renovation. How is that?
That's good.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I want to check about online questions. Okay, great.
I just have one more comment on that Willow's question. One of the responsibilities that your finance committee has on a monthly basis is to go over these numbers. And as we're going into the renovation project, we're going to be having to look at this pro forma, but we look monthly at sales, we look at gross margin. I'm just looking at the sheet that we look at every month, but we're going to be monitoring, and we do this, on the different categories within the store as well. But we look at compensation to sales, net income, days of cash on hand, available cash, current ratios, member shares, and debt to equity. We monitor these with the idea that, because we are concerned that if we start to change anything, it's going to mess up our graph, that we're hoping in 10, 12 years out. So we're going to be closely monitoring as we go through this, and knowing that we want to make sure that we're going to be comparing what we've estimated is the pro forma with the reality. And so this is something that our finance committee will be looking at. And we're hoping that in doing so, that will assure, that we're going in the right direction. But we will be monitoring it continuously.
Great. I've got another question here. Want to say your name? Thank you.
Yes, hi, I'm Andy Stevenson. I want to thank you all for the tremendous work that you're doing for us. This is extremely important. It's part of why my wife Janie and I came to Belfast, is because the co-op is here and we believe very strongly that this is a cornerstone for our community. So we want to thank you for that. Can you say anything about how the carbon footprint for the new facility differs from the carbon footprint that we have now?
I don't know that you could design a less efficient building than the one we currently operate out of. So I'm completely serious. So any of the upgrades that we're bringing to, so those windows out in front, those are single pane glass that flap in the wind, and if it rains really hard, rain comes inside. So just the fact that we're replacing the windows at the front of the store is huge. The fact that the HVAC system that we currently have is a dinosaur. It was bought used, and it's much older than I am, I believe. And when you get up into the ceiling and look at, the ductwork that's up there, all of that, like, it's an amazingly inefficient building that we've been operating out of. Yeah, that's Dave. Dave's on our facilities team. And with a mind to sustainability and with a mind to design, the one thing that I keep coming back to is when I'm out in the world and at other co-ops and seeing the difference between co-ops that were band-aided together over years, like ours was, and co-ops that have been designed, right? There's a huge difference between those two things. And from a worker standpoint, from a shopper standpoint, two completely different things. And I love our building. I love our co-op. I love how much history is in that building. But having something that has actually been designed by people that understand how to make an efficiently built building is going to be, it's going to be huge. It's going to be life-changing for all of us.
So Andy, one thing I was hoping we would see would be some solar panels, on the roof, and we don't have that in the plan right now, though we're anticipating some opportunities with grant, and we're also looking, when we look at the roof design, it looks structurally, it's going to be acceptable. Okay, floor panels. That was because a lot of times these HVAC systems will stick up on the roof. Actually, ours are going to be behind, right, at this point. Refrigeration, okay, it's going to be out in the back. It's a better concept, but we talked about this, with the designers, that we want to make sure we're not closing the door on getting some solar panels on the roof.
Are there additional questions in the audience? Yes, I thought you might have one. Here you go. Your name, please.
I'm Nancy. Hi. I have a lot of questions. I was trying to wait to make sure everybody asked my questions so that I would only have one at the end, but I'm just going to ask them, and then can you retain them and then just answer them? You're talking about 30% increased retail space or linear space, but how much surface or square footage are you adding really to the co-op? That's one. Are the banks that you're going to use for the loan local banks? Because I heard in the videos that you're talking about local banking. I have seen some co-ops that were designed by NCG, and they look all the same after a while. I mean, just like I went in Minnesota, I stepped into a co-op and it's like, oh, I've seen that in Maine. I've seen that in New York. I'm wondering how much of the uniqueness of the co-op can you retain? Is the team that you are hiring, the architects from Maine, from the area, do they understand who we are? sorry. Well, I had a question about the pro forma also, and if you included like, and it might not be in the pro forma from what I understand, but the price of, the materials that are going to be used into renovating the co-op, we've seen, like I've been working on my house and the price of lumber and everything went up, like not just like I think that you, for contingency, you added about 10% of the price. I mean, roughly 10 or 11% of the price, even less than 10 of the price of the total cost. But lumber were 20% higher. Like, how do you manage those? Like if it keeps on going like that, do you have a plan? And then I'm jumping onto those $923,000 that you have saved to, like, how long did it take you to save those $923,000? Do you have a caution? Because John, in your presentation, you were talking about, yes, there are some risks, but you didn't elaborate on those risks. I would like to know what kind of risk is it?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
If we can have them answer those questions and see, is that, no, hang on to it because you might need it.
Okay.
But I want you to be able to answer. Great questions.
Additional square footage. So we're looking at about 1,500 retail square feet that we're adding. So going from, I think that's right, somewhere around there. Local banks, are they local banks? So Cooperative Fund of Northeast it's a New England. It's not, we did look at Bangor Savings and Machia Savings Bank. They were both interested in the project and put in bids on it. Cooperative Fund of Northeast, we have used them. We used them for, we took out a small loan when we put in the automatic doors and built the larger customer restrooms pre-pandemic. And they also, we had a loan with them, I think in 2012. So we have a history with them. They work with cooperatives. They're a pretty fantastic organization. So I'm pretty happy with our bank choice. NCG Design. So NCG, the National Co-op Group, they do have a store design team. We are not using them. We are using, as far as interior design, Woodhull, the architects that we're using, they're out of Portland, Maine. We're using them for interior design. The store will have, I would say that the people that we are working with, we've been working with them for 5 years on this project, and they have, they're steeped in Belfast community co-op culture. They know what the feel is. They know what it's like to be in the store. They know what we're looking for out of this as far as, shopper experience and what we want the store to feel like. And they're, I don't think it's not going to feel like, it's not going to feel like any other store. It's going to be unique. What's the next one?
Materials and contingency.
Oh, yeah. So, if we had done this project 5 years ago, if we had done this project 10 years ago, we would be in much better shape. The fact of the matter is we didn't, right? We are dealing with deferred maintenance on this building that
Just what if the material costs go up substantially?
Sure.
Will the contingency take care of that?
I believe so. I mean, what I have seen, what our GC has said about price materials, yeah, you're right, Nancy. There was a spike, right? And things seem to have leveled off. Some things have even come down a little bit. Between now and when we start the project, will things go up? They might. I don't know that I don't know that anybody's projecting that right now. As John mentioned earlier, yeah, they're building it. We're building in a 9% contingency on our side of things. They're building in another 8 or 9% on their side of things. We'll do everything we can to try to keep those costs in order. I mean, and the bottom line is, the longer we wait to do something, the more things are going to cost, right? So, yeah, I think. Yeah.
How long did it take to save the cash on hand and what?
how long did it take to save? I mean, I could,
We've been holding.
Yeah.
We've been close to $1 million in cash for several years now with the idea, let's do this renovation, all right? But we haven't been, so, I mean, at some point, if it's not necessarily a good business idea to have lots of cash, but I mean, if you're not investing it into your programs, but we've been ready to pull the trigger and go forward on this for several years, really financially. So, but I don't think it's to our advantage to try to raise any more than $1 million in cash than what we have.
I don't understand anything about the risks. She asked about what are the risks? You talked about risks.
Well, I mean, there's going to be risk. I mean, I think that's why we haven't pulled the trigger. It's been worrying about the risks.
But can you say a little more about what the risks are? That's what I thought.
Well, the biggest risk is that, as you say, there's going to be more of a recession and that we can't hire workers to come in. And in the best of all worlds, we'd have a work team that could come in and work the night shift, okay, and let us have our business during the day. But that's not going to happen, at least not with the workforce that's out there. We've gone, and I know Ernie and I both went to the last meeting, with the partners, and with that concern, we were telling them, like, as a board, we're not feeling comfortable if we're going to be continuing to see increases in this cost. It's got to be controlled, or this isn't going to fly. Maybe I think Ernie and I went in there pretty loud, didn't we? But I think the point is that this is what we call value engineering at this point. And they talked about actually being able to start reducing some of the costs at this point. And the big thing is, like you mentioned, to try to eliminate this risk, okay, of the cost. That's one of the reasons right now we're trying to purchase the equipment. We want to purchase it now. And that's why we need to, raise basically another $100,000 in the next couple of weeks so that we can buy the equipment, because we've got a fixed price right now for the equipment. And that's a big part of our cost, is this equipment. So, I mean, I can't tell you that we're eliminating all the risks. It's just not, it's not the real world, but we think we've got a pretty good sense of it.
So I have someone else who also has questions. Were most of your questions answered, though?
Well, I still have some, but we can
Thank you so much. I'll be back to you if I can. Here you go. And your name?
Hi, my name is Armini. I guess this is kind of a question thinking more about like way in the future, because we're increasing it by 30%. And for me, when I think of a business, it is always something that's getting bigger and ever changing. And I'm wondering if in the plan that you've made now, you've thought about like, oh, when this happens in 10 years, is the building that you're making right now going to be like easily adaptable to making it bigger or like expanding? Or is the idea that we are going to hold the integrity of a small business, or small business as it is now, and you're going to cap it and try and just make it better as a small like community?
I mean, I'll throw out my opinion. I think this project is about making this building work, right? Making this building, as up to date and functional as we possibly can. If we're talking long-term growth strategies for a cooperative, sky's the limit, right? So like, I don't know that we're ever going to be a $30 million store out of that location. But, there are tons of communities in in our area that would benefit from having a cooperative business, something that the Belfast Community Co-op could participate in. We could branch out. We could have 5 locations, 20 years from now. I think that that's that's part of the value of the model, and that's part of the value of how cooperative growth works, that like, it doesn't have to all happen out of this one store. We need to get this store working. We need to get this store safe and efficient. But as far as like where the Belfast Community Co-op could go, I think the sky's the limit.
Right. We're just getting close on time.
All right, well, just a quick comment, because that's a good question. When I went with Doug actually to a conference where we met other co-ops, And with the understanding we are trying to actually answer that sort of a question. And what it seems to be what's happening nationally is that co-ops get to a certain size, but then rather than become like a Whole Foods or something, a conglomerate, they're branching out. And like we've had some communications, like with actually the question, the lady left, but we have had communications with Rockland as an example. But the idea is that, you know, there's a certain size, you know, and past that, it loses that community feel. And so it very well could be the future is additional stores.
Great.
And if I could have one more thing about that, because I think this is an important point. When we talk about really long range planning for the co-op and we talk about strategic planning and what that looks like, that's where everybody in this room can participate in that, right? So like the work of this board, like, you know, me, I'm trying to run a grocery store and you know, keep my workers and my customers safe. The job of these folks and the job of you, right, is to figure out what this co-op is going to be 40 years from now, right? And then give us all the direction that we need, give us the operational direction to take the co-op, right? So if you have ideas about what you would like to see this co-op be, you know, 20 years from now, then like get involved, right? Get involved at the board level, get involved at the community level, get on a committee. Yeah. And I think that's the work of our community. That's the work of the board. Sorry.
I have two more folks who want to say something, so
Okay.
go for it, Jen. I've got three more. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. You already know me. Well, I'm Jen. I've been at the co-op for going on 22 years in March. Sorry. The co-op has been my life for 22 years. I love it so much. And what this is going to be such an improvement to our lives because the co-op is our community. We are the hub. We love each other. We may fight and bicker, but we love each other. So thank you all for coming. We adore you. And I'm going to let David talk.
Hi, everybody. My name is David. I work at the co-op. I'm actually in the facilities team that maintains a lot of the equipment in the store. Let's face it, like Doug said, the store's 60 years old. When I look around at the store and stuff like that, there's a lot of patchwork. I feel like the new store is going to bring new life to the building. I kind of look at it not really as a phoenix rising, but similar. New and improved, better, everything like that. I do have a couple questions, Doug.
Bring it. That's okay.
My first question is, are we going to be experiencing product unavailability during the renovation?
Why? What would be
In
the
terms
cause
of when they start working on the sales floor?
that?
Is there going to be?
Oh, I see what you mean. There will definitely be disruption. So there will definitely be disruption. Will there be unavailability? I don't know, Dave. You know, I mean, I think that we're going to do our best to, you know, if we're putting in the new cheese case, then, you know, cheese moves over to produce and we, you know, do single facings of stuff instead of having, you know, 6 facings of something. So I think that there are strategies that we can use. I think that we will try to keep as much product on the sales floor and available as we can. But again, like part of what we've learned with, you know, all of the mechanical failures that have happened, you know, when you can't get it on the sales floor, you find a worker and we'll try to get you what you need to get out the door. Right. So luckily we're experienced. And
Dave, did you have another question?
Yes. And my next question is, I think you and I discussed it, kind of talked about this off and on a little bit. How, I assume we're gonna be using a lot of environmentally friendly material during the co-op, during the renovation and stuff like that. Is a lot of the, trying to word it, how much of it is actually gonna be like renewable, recycled materials, things
Sure.
like that?
That's a good question, Dave. All I know from experience with Warren Construction and the projects that I've seen them do, that they definitely make an effort to use renewable materials when possible. I know that all of the finishing and the woodwork in the Portland co-op was refinished wood. It's a good question though, and I can try to pin them down a little bit more about that and get back to you. But yeah, just judging from what I've seen from other projects that they've worked on. Yeah.
I know we are getting close to our limit of when we need to leave the building, correct? So if you could be pretty brief. Just want to put that up near your mouth.
Just sort of following on what Jen said. When I moved to Belfast 16 years ago, the first place I went to was the Belfast Co-op. And I found on a bulletin board a little index card that led me to the house that I lived in for the next 8 years. And I just remember that, you know, it was the Belfast Co-op. That was the branding, the Belfast Co-op. And it just dawned on me recently that it's been rebranded. And somebody put the word community in there. So it's now the Belfast Community Co-op. And I just wanted to applaud that move. It's really subtle, but very, very important. And
Thanks.
you might think about that if you do branch out and have other stores, they'll also be, it's your brand now, Community Co-op.
Yeah, we thought it was really important. Thank you, Chris.
We're really up. Is it very quick? We're really up against time. Go for it.
So I wasn't done. And my last question, like I have more, but you know, I'll save you. So you didn't say, so I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on those 923. My skill is on numbers. So until I get the numbers kind of right, I need to, what is your caution? What's your caution after you spend your 923K? Do you have any caution? Cushion, yeah, sorry.
Sure.
I can spell it.
John, I can.
And
yeah. So that one slide that John showed where it was the days of cash on hand, right? So that is calculated by taking our average expenses, dividing out by the days in the month and how much cash we have, right? So like you see that big, huge spike. I'm sorry, you see the big, huge spike and then you see it come down. Where we would start to get nervous is if it came close to that 12 days of cash on hand line. So when we look at nationally, like there's a risk committee that monitors the finances of all the NCG co-ops, of which we are one. If they notice that a co-op is in any sort of dire straits and getting close to their threshold is 10 days of cash on hand. If it gets close to that, then they will contact the board of directors. They will contact the general manager. They will work with them to try to turn some of that around. So when we talk about the cushion, if it were to, okay, if our days of cash on hand were to drop below that, that's when we would be probably in dangerous territory. But everything that we've modeled out isn't showing that we're doing that.
Oh, there's no intent to spend it down to zero.
Right.
We're not spending it down to zero.
Nancy, I'm looking at the actual end of the year, our audit. So we're saying we're going to spend 923,000. We actually, in the end of September, end of our year, had 1,370,000. Okay, so at that point, you know, I'd say we had $400,000 cushion. I thought you said caution. Okay, but we're still keeping a fair amount of cash. Yes.
I think we're at the place where we need to make a shift. I just want to say thank you, both to those of you who are in the room and those of you who are online for great questions. And now passing it on.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Thank you everyone for your questions. and for being here. It's been great to see you in person. It's great to have 27 people, 29 people on Zoom with us. Thank you so much. We have to be out of the building in 9 minutes. But please, if you have additional questions, please, write us at board@belfast.coop, or grab someone on the way out, or so let us know. We want to hear from you. Please pick up if you are interested in finding out more about the capital campaign and want a packet for that. If you're an owner, the packets are right back here. And last note is our annual meeting is Sunday, February 26th, and it will be here. And so hope to see as many of you back then. And thank you again. Have a good evening.